press record. And there's your confirmation. Right. So let's share that. Okay. So you should be able to see what the client really wants to buy. There we go. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. Quick slurp. Okay. So don't need that. Okay, so quick recap from last week, and as always, interactive. Come off of mute, shout away with any tough questions. So, talked about active, and we talked about passive lead generation. Can anyone give me an example of active lead gen?
Active is one. Yeah.
Cold calling.
Cold calling. Fantastic. Yeah. So you're actively going out seeking leads. Passive lead gen. Anyone got an example of passive?
Adverts on social
Websites.
Websites, yeah. So they're kind of receiving inquiries. Of course, what you've had to do to generate that traffic, that would probably be an active piece of lead gen. That might be networking, might be whatever it happens to be.
Networking is active.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Well, it depends how dynamic you are, I suppose, Laurie. I've been to plenty of networking events, but they've been passive. But yeah, maybe I'm just a bit. So for me, it's active. You are actively going out building relationships.
Yeah, posting. Posting is active.
Yes. Yeah.
What else is there?
And I'm noticing you do loads of that, Daryl. You do loads of posting on LinkedIn.
I need to get my hands dirty a bit more there, mate. I think they're a bit boring.
Right. Couldn't possibly comment. But
well, now they're not. They're all really interesting posts, actually. But it'd be sometimes just good to make people stop and stare a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're in Morocco, you probably don't want to be doing this, but I do a thing every Tuesday, which is free, and I think one or two of you have been on there already. But today I'm doing something on LinkedIn about profile, and in with this sort of package that you've invested in, you do get a half an hour of one-to-one on your LinkedIn profile. So, and I did that with Rebecca last week. Excuse me. And I would encourage you to take advantage of that. If you feel your LinkedIn profile is fine, then no need. But you're entitled to it, so I would take advantage of it. Just get half an hour booked in the calendar, and I'll give you a half an hour bit of feedback and coaching, whatever it is you want to do. But also I'm doing this free thing at 1:15 today. Anyway, moving on. So active and passive. Favorite clients, we talked about avatars. We'll talk about those kind of going forward. And I was watching a movie. It was really I didn't know if it was satirical or what, but I was watching a movie the other day, and it's called Sorry to Bother You, and we've got Danny Glover and a few other characters that you may or may not recognize. But it was talking about avatars as well, so it's even made its way through to Hollywood speak. So this is when you know you've had a breakthrough. How are you going to target those? So you go to market. We talked about that the previous week. How you're going to target those avatars once you've got a picture, of course, of who you're trying to engage, win business from. It just makes everything, is what you're doing taking you further towards that goal or away from? Is it a distraction? And I liked that Herb Kelleher analogy with the Southwest Airlines, and one of his direct reports asking him about introducing a Caesar salad menu on board. Is it taking us towards being a low-cost airline or taking us away? So there was a pretty 1 and 0 approach. Not everything in life is quite that simple, but it's not a bad sort of instrument, if you like, to test and then getting the right message for your offer. Of course, that's why we have the avatars. So the message to avatar A could be different because that sector, that particular avatar, has different business needs to someone else, and so the message may change, but what you do for a living is still what you do for a living. Okay, and then the paid ads, which we've already mentioned. Now, Medwin, you mentioned about Facebook groups, didn't you? And I can't remember, was that directed at Laurie? I think was asking a question, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was about yeah, we were talking about mums, Facebook groups of mums and stuff like that, and local community stuff. Yeah.
Laurie, did you get a chance to engage with that, or no?
Actually, I haven't taken any action because this past week.
Oh, you've gone back on mute, Laurie.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my week has just been busy with children in hospitals, so nothing, done nothing.
Understood.
I watched last week's recording. That's all.
Good enough. And then actually going back and measuring. Now, sometimes we have limited amount of data. Some will have more, some will have less. But I don't think it actually matters. I think to do the exercise is insightful in some way. Will tell you, because your intuition can often be mistaken. Your intuition, I think I get lots of leads from networking. It's something I went through last year. But I think that was actually tainted because we'd all been locked up, and it was actually such a joy to get out in person that I wanted to persuade myself. And I'm probably one of the more suggestible people you will ever come across. I'd be Darren Brown's dream. My intuition was that networking was really, really good. But I figured out that whilst I enjoy it, and I do it because I enjoy it, getting out and meeting, I'm quite a sociable person, it actually doesn't develop me that many leads because my target market is often not going to the networking events that I want to go to. But I like working with those people. Paul Cadman, if you know Paul Cadman, which you obviously do, Daryl, people like that. I like meeting those kind of people because it's about insight and it's about learning. So you've got to know why you're doing things. And the 11th commandment of thou shalt not kid thyself is front and center for me. So anyway, cost to acquire. So today we're talking about a process. Sorry, was that Daryl coming in there?
That's I'm reading to myself, mate. I'm going to put myself back on mute.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. This could be a long day. So, part of the process is called deal qualification, which sounds a little bit raw or visceral, but actually it's about, can we work with this person? Do we want to work with this person, organization, etc.? Is it going to yield results for us? But that's where we are. We're literally halfway through. Excuse me. So we're going to talk about what we're going to learn from today. No, it's certainly not the Sergeant Major, but it's understanding the client needs, which is often not the first words that come out of their mouth. It's often something else that's kind of driving that. And that's what we want to do. We want to get under the skin of all that and how to use communication to demonstrate your authority. Now, I don't particularly, and that's why I was just thinking about, why did I use that that particular image there? From Full Metal Jacket, if anyone's seen the Stanley Kubrick movie. This guy he was a technical advisor to that film in the beginning. That's how his role, I can't remember his name, Lee something or other. He was a technical advisor. He was a former sergeant major in the Marines anyway. He was brought in for his technical expertise to show how that process was worked. But he got so frustrated with the actor that they brought in to play the role that Kubrick fired the actor and got him to do it instead. So just a bit of background. But he was, if you've ever seen that movie, he's pretty scary in that movie. And I use that to overemphasize the word authority. I'm not keen on the word authority. but each of us, no matter, we've got a particular set of expertise. We have authority. We have domain expertise in our chosen subjects. Laurie, you with yours, talking about trauma, talking about some really difficult situations. Rachel, you with the university, and the training and the skills and education that you can offer your customer base. You have authority. You may not feel like you do, but you have domain expertise or authority. Daryl and Midwin, same too. You have authority. And whether I like it or not, I have some authority as well. And identifying what that authority is not always easy to express it in words, but whatever it is what other people, is how you position or brand yourself online. Then of course we'll have some questions, want this to be as interactive as possible. But JIC, just in case, sometimes you don't have to go through a great big question and answer and on the red couch, or what's driving this behavior and all of that, because actually some people are just ready to buy. They don't want to go through all that. And I have, as an example, and we've probably all got examples, but I went in to buy a frying pan. I got into cooking during lockdown. Normally it was TV dinners and all of that, which I'm sure it was for many of us. Well, I got into cooking during lockdown, and I went to get a new frying pan. And it was like something out of a Monty Python sketch. So I picked out this frying pan. I'd spent a lot of time comparing them side by side, and I thought, no, this is the one I want. And I took it to the counter, and the bloke whose shop it was said, "Oh, I don't want to buy that." And I said, well, why don't I want to buy that? He said, anyway, went through this whole thing about, oh, God, I just want to buy a frying pan. I've got, here's the money. And he was like, well, what do you want to use it for? And I said, well, I just thought, I just want to buy a frying pan. You will get incoming inquiries where, sometimes it makes sense, because if you've got what I think we would all class as a highly considered purchase. We're not selling anything for 20 quid here. Well, per user basis, I don't know, Matoba, maybe, but on a scale, you're not selling something for 20 quid. It's a highly considered purchase. That's what the marketing people say. But sometimes, and I'll demonstrate that to you a little bit later, people just want to buy. They don't want to go through all that. And recognizing the signs of when to, pull the trigger or not, as James Bond would say, that's a real skill and a real gift, and I hope to give some insight into that today. So, most people that come to you, an incoming inquiry, they get 70% of which they've already done their research. They've already made some decisions. They may not have made the actual decision to buy from you, but they've certainly made the decision that they know enough about you that they want to talk to you. And so, one of the key questions that I ask is, what exactly is it about my profile, my LinkedIn profile, or my website, my expertise that made you reach out to me? That can be a really good question and a really insightful question. So rather than me trying to guess, asking the question about what is it you've seen. So the whole point is, don't put unnecessary barriers in the way of people wanting to buy. Bless you. So, and you probably, and I can't remember which store it is. It's a big department multiple. But when you try and buy something online, they, just before you do the transaction or whatever the button's called, they invite you to open an account, and that drives me mad. So they're putting a barrier in, because they want your details, I presume, for marketing purposes, but they put a barrier in place. It drives me mad. So just think about your own businesses. If you're doing stuff online, if you're doing Shopify or something like online, and Matoba probably are, and certainly Rachel, many of your clients are going to be doing Shopify. We have to be really careful about, are we putting unnecessary barriers? Of course we want all that data, because that's really interesting for us, and harvesting that data is going to reap rewards later on. But nothing beats actually getting the order. For me, everything else can come at a different time, but what you don't want to do is put barriers in the way. Anyway, we've done that. So something like 70% of all stuff that gets put in the cart is abandoned because of putting a barrier in the way, or it's a poor performing website. People give up, they just go somewhere else. And that's why Amazon, I think, wins, is because it's incredibly easy. And I don't particularly like giving them money. I feel they're awash with cash already. This is not a political rant, but I'm a big supporter of local businesses if I can, for many reasons. But supporting your local business community is kind of important to me, if they can do the work. Okay, right. So this might be a really interesting thing. Is this might be the first time you've ever interacted with this person. You may have met them ages ago, networking or whatever, or you may not. That may be a new name. You have no idea why they're talking to you. So it might be the first time you've ever interacted with them on this particular session. And so when you go into a call, whether it's a Zoom call, whether it's an in-person meeting, I always have two measures, actually. One's what I would call a best possible result, BPR, and the other is minimum acceptable result. So we don't always win the business, we don't always get the order, but if we can at least come out with a minimum acceptable result, what might that look like? Does anyone do anything similar to that when you prepare for prospective customer meetings?
Sorry, what's BPR and MAR?
BPR, best possible result. MAR, minimum acceptable result.
Okay. So you're asking what we do in terms of preparation for meetings?
Yeah. Do you have your own sort
got
of
a set agenda
process to go through when you prepare for, or do you just, now I'll be honest, the first 5-10 years I probably just walked into a meeting and
Yeah, I do, but it's very coachy. So
very coaching.
very coachy.
Tell us more about that.
An interesting adjective, isn't it? Coachy.
Okay, so before I go into any meeting like this meeting, what I do is I sit down and I ask myself, what's the purpose of being in this meeting? And then I ask myself, what kind of person do I want to present myself as to you? So I want to be attentive. I want to show you that I'm interested. I want to show my appreciation for this. And I also want to be curious so that I can learn. So I set the intentions of being attentive and curious. And then I think about, well, how can I do that in a Zoom meeting, which could potentially get really tiresome? So then I think about different ways of keeping myself, like noticing Mr. Tickle Cups and stuff like that in the meeting. So I stay curious. I'm noticing all the details of everything because I chose to do that. But you see, that's what I do. And then if I'm like, just before this meeting, I got a very disturbing telephone call. And in order to get out of that negative mindset, I did a little bit of what I call PQ reps, which is just getting myself out of those negative thoughts and into how I feel. Mr. Happy. So, yeah. So I do prepare like in my head.
No, and thank you for taking us through that. That's really important. What about Rachel or Medwin? Do you do any prep, and if so, what do you do?
For me, I always have notes. So if it looks like I'm not listening, it's because I'm typing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of keeping like a Google document of a meeting or something, and just having notes to keep me on track, and then I can easily look back on stuff. But I think it's a good idea what Laurie had, to have an idea of what she wants to come out of from the meeting, or what she wants to get from it. And I think I'm going to take that forward, to have a clear idea of what I want before I do something.
I'm quite similar. I quite struggle to retain information unless I've actually written it down pretty much as soon as I've received it. So a lot of the time, if I'm kind of back and forth as well, it's because I'm writing notes. A lot of the meetings with new customers that we have currently is stuff that's just coming straight to us, which is obviously why I'm here, so we can start expanding a bit more. But yeah, generally my preparation is kind of just keeping myself calm and hoping that the person on the other side of the call knows what I'm talking about.
Okay, all right, understood. Okay, thank you for that. So best possible result most of the time is going to be, I want this deal, I want this client, and whatever that might look like, and that can often drive your mindset or your behavior. But sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you know, if it's a more considered purchase, if there are more people to speak to in the account than just the data processing officer or whatever it happens to be, the minimum acceptable result might be an endorsement for what we're doing and a referral to someone else in the business. Oh, you need to speak to our IT director or something like that. That might be an example of who to go to. Okay, right. So discovery process. I'm working on one particular opportunity at the moment, which probably can't go into too much detail, but we don't know what the process is. It's a fairly new product, but I've got to believe if you get enough people, clever people around the table focused on a single goal, and sometimes that can take time to actually work out what the goal is when you've got more than 3 people in the room. Often you can get 4 different opinions. But we're going to go on a process of discovery to see what works. And even in online advertising, and I suspect Medwin might know more about this than I, but they have A/B testing because they don't know what the right advert is going to be. Now, you know, when you Google search something, and I haven't got the screen up in front of me, but there's an arrow that points either left or right. I can't remember which way around it is, but Google spent $2 million A/B testing what way round to have that arrow, what size to have it, what color, and all of that. So that even Google took it very, very seriously around. They recognize that the world is changing. And I think, Daryl, you used a phrase in a meeting we were at fairly recently about the world's changing every day. And the right way to do something might be completely different tomorrow than what it was this morning. It's changing at a dizzying pace. And so even Google recognized that. That's my point. So, and we're going to talk about monetization a little bit later. It's a really interesting process to go through. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Guessing. Rules about guessing. Well, I'm going to say, don't guess. Don't guess. Sometimes you have to guess, and therefore tell people it's your best guess. But to go back and the number of salespeople I've worked with, where it turns out they gave me a really important piece of information, but not told me it's a guess, then that can really skew the numbers at the end of the month, and that can be really, really difficult. And especially if you've got such a personalized offer, Laurie, that you do, you want to be asking more questions to get really underneath what's going on, what's important to that particular prospect. So you certainly mustn't guess. But sometimes you haven't got all the facts and you have to make a guess or make certain assumptions. But what's important is that you communicate with others these are my assumptions, this is my guess, and therefore whatever solution or to the problem I'm going to give, it's going to assume these things are in place. That's a bit abstract. Daryl, what do you think?
What am I thinking specifically?
Are you asking me, or yeah?
I'm thinking about that I should be paying more attention because I drifted off.
You've got one.
Fantastic. You know what? I admire your candor. Yeah, there you go. So we're creating an atmosphere of.
No, I couldn't remember, to be honest. There was a squirrel. I think he was somewhere in my vision, so I think there was a bit of a distraction there.
Could I jump in with a rescue here?
I'm all ears.
I don't want to dominate the conversation, but while you were talking, I was thinking about the last time that I booked a client, and she came already knowing she needed a coach. It was just, did she like me? So I also knew that was her situation because her friend referred me and told me that. So I went into the meeting with simply the intention to find out whether I liked her. Because if I had to work with this woman for the next year and it would be a miserable experience, no kind of money would make it worthwhile. I already knew she was ready to buy. So I went in with an expectation to listen to what it was she wanted and to figure out how much time what she was looking for could be used to answer her question, not what I knew it would take to solve her problems, but what she would think she would need. So she had all of these huge problems, and I could tell as soon as she was talking, she knew she would never be able to solve this in less than a year. So then I knew I had to offer her the year-long package, even though I knew that I could probably help her resolve it in 3 sessions. If I offered her the 3 sessions, she wouldn't believe me. She would say, there's no way. You're so full of, crap.
Yes.
So, I mean, and it's been 3 sessions and I've resolved everything. She actually got the money back that she had lost, and she's just happy. So she's made back more money from working with me in 3 sessions than it cost her to hire me for an entire year. So she could go away happy now, right? Now I've got to deal with her for a full year because I knew she wouldn't buy from me before that. But dealing with her for another year is not a problem because I like her.
Okay.
So these things had to come in to play in the thought process of how will I make this offer to her? Because I knew she wouldn't accept an offer that was realistic from my side. So does that answer the question?
That well, and then some actually, because what you've done is you've also brought in another, which would just come off of share. You mentioned a few things there, Laurie, and thank you for that. It's a great example. But actually, as business people, some of which have got our own businesses, some of us are employees. So as employees, sometimes you don't have that choice in the same way. But let's make the assumption that you do have that choice. You also have rights and entitlements, I believe, as human beings, actually. You have the right, and I know it sounds a bit weird, but some of the people I've met, particularly in Canary Wharf, can be frankly obnoxious and really nasty. And actually, they're throughout the world. It's not confined to Canary Wharf, but there's some massive egos that go with that particular community. I don't want to speak ill of them because I had a great time, but it takes a certain low self-esteem, if you like, to survive in that kind of world sometimes. You just, it goes with the territory. But and it's hard. You do have rights and entitlements to be treated the way you want to be treated. And but I'm quite a shallow person. So at the time, I'd be prepared to be sworn at, because I was going to land a big deal. And if they feel, if I'm creating the atmosphere where they can unload on me, at me, it wasn't really that personal. And at the end of the day, what they're doing is they're actually fully engaging with me, and they'll go at the end of the day. You know, I really like Keith. I can really talk to him. They're not really talking to me. They're shouting at me. They're doing all kinds of other things, but they end up placing a big order. That was the mindset I almost sleepwalked into. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was one I justified after the fact rather than before the fact, because that's what I had to go through to get that business. Now, I would make a different decision right here, right now, 20 odd years later, because I'm in a different position in life. But sometimes I could have had the right to go, do you know what? I don't need that. I'm going to go somewhere else, take my ball somewhere else. But I went through that decision. So rights and entitlements you got on into there, Laurie. The other thing you talked about was you could have solved their problem in 3 sessions. I think I heard that, but she wouldn't believe you. So the question then is, do you sell them what they need, or do you sell them what they want to buy? Number 2, absolutely. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm always honest. You may not like what you hear, but to be honest with you, the last cohort of this, which was 6 months or so ago, somebody, and this is out loud and live, just as we are now. They said that's unethical. Which I don't believe it is. And the world is not black and white, as we know. It's 50 odd shades of grey, or whatever the phrase is. To knowingly sell someone what they wanted to buy versus what they need, and I have to say, it is a grey area.
I think it's an iterative process.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about that, because I think that's right.
I think there's a logic, and if you've got somebody that clearly wants to buy something and it's fairly clear and you know what it is, then they're happy with that situation. But it may well be, taking Laurie's point, for example, where perhaps she only needs 3 sessions over a month, but she wants, I want you there for 12 months. It might actually, the likelihood is it's going to start a really positive relationship. There's going to be a lot of things closed down quickly. And really, if the relationship's developing in the right way, I think really is that out of those conversations, there's actually more, there's a way that, if you like, both from a customer client point of view, you both create opportunities, because when you're talking, especially, from a coaching point of view, advisory point of view, you're naturally having an interesting conversation, and out of that will come lots of tangential directions. And it could be actually that by doing that, you're actually going to add more value to your clients. So even though you've got the call out of the way, basically, I think you're naturally going to go further the longer you go. By the same token, if you get to the stage, well, I don't really know what extra I'm going to do today, then probably you've done enough to develop the relationship to have a very open conversation about expectations, to decide what to do next. Out of that conversation may come something that is actually more value, or it may well be, let's take a rain check and let's touch base in 3 months' time.
An interesting thing that came up in our 3rd session was she had 5 objectives. I said, if we reached 3 objectives in a year, will you be happy? And she said, yeah. And she told me what the 3 objectives she had. And then she said, are you a matchmaker? Because I need a man. right? And I'm like, well, I can't promise you I can find you a man, but I can promise that you'll be a lot happier in yourself, so you'll be more attractive. And she's like, okay. And then at the end of the third session, I said to her, look, we have to redefine our goals now for the year, because you've already reached 4 out of the 5 things you wanted. We just don't have a man for you right now. So are we going to spend the rest of the year looking for a man, or what do you want to do? Because, you know, we've done it. And she said, I can't believe that we got all of this done, right, in just 3 sessions. I would never have believed it. And I said, yeah, I mean, it will take a while to find the final goal, and we'll get all 5 of them by the end of the year. But let's redefine our goals. What else do you want? Because that can't be the sum total of your life for the next year. And so she's got all new goals now. She's starting a new business. She's, you know, she's got plans for traveling and dealing with her father in whatever country he's in right now. I think it's Saudi Arabia, and all of this other stuff that she can do. So I had no qualms whatsoever on the third session, redefining the full year's goals according to what now she realizes she can accomplish. So I don't think that it's unethical. That's where I'm going, to sell her what she wants.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's a good example. Sorry, Midwin.
Also, from a selfish point of view, you know, at the end of the day, the reason we're doing this is because it's our livelihood. So if someone, you know, when I was working at the bike shed in London, if someone walked in and said, I want to buy a leather jacket, I've just bought a Harley, I'm having a midlife crisis, I have £3,000 to spend, I'm not going to turn around and say, well, we've got a jacket here for 350 quid, which is actually going to do a better job because it's waterproof. Because he doesn't want to hear that. He just wants to look cool. He wants to feel good. You know, he wants his big loud bike. He wants to look cool. So
I told you not to tell anyone that story, Megan. Oh, stop it.
You know, if I had turned that guy, or if I had turned him off to that more expensive jacket and just said, no, seriously, you don't need that, he would have gone somewhere else, and that's £3,000 out of pocket for me. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's a really good microcosm of where my life's at. I tell you about a frying pan story that somebody said, "Oh, yeah, I want to buy," and you're selling people cool leather jackets. That's an analogy right there. So anyway, so Rachel, you're ever so quiet. Are you okay? Do you wanna say anything?
No. I think. Well, my thoughts are pretty basic on this, but I was just thinking, well, you can sell somebody. I can't remember what you said. Sell them what they want. Oh, it's unethical to sell someone what they want over what they need. So I was kind of thinking, well, you know, I went into a shop the other day and I wanted a vacuum cleaner. But what I really wanted was a mealy one. Now, I didn't need that, but that was what I wanted. And I don't think that the assistant should come up to me and say, no, why don't you buy, you know, this Vax one? It'll do everything that you want and it's just as good. Because in my head, no, I want, you know, for whatever reason, I want the expensive one. And it might be because maybe my parents have got that and they've had it for 20 plus years. And, you know, you don't always know what somebody's reasons are for why they want that, I think.
No, I think that's a really good shout, actually. And I'd strongly recommend Mila to anyone else as well. I think they are great. Right. Anyway, so what have we got? What have we got next? So, yeah. First of all, if you don't sell them what they want to buy, you will never get a chance to sell them what they need anyway. So that's another way of justifying it to myself, to make me feel better about things. Anyway, so
and this all just underscores what you said a few sessions ago, which is sales is a service. You're providing them with what they want. It's the service that they're looking for.
Yeah. That's a really good shout. Really good shout. Okay, right. Got a couple of other things to share, if I may. There we go. Right. So we are actually talking. We talked about some fantastic stuff, but actually we're talking about communication here, and which is at the heart of all sales, I believe. So I'm going to whiz through this. So communication is not when I've, or anyone else for that matter, have finished speaking. Communication happens when the other person understands what it is I'm saying or what I want. And the same is true of your prospects. Communication happens when you understand what they want as well. So that's, I'm sure someone much cleverer said that, but I said that too. So, okay, so okay, so listening, we're finally getting there. So definition is when you're able to accurately sort of retell that story, that narrative using different words to demonstrate not only that you've been listening, but to demonstrate that you understand what it is they want to buy, particularly when it comes to more complex, well, actually, which we are all selling, complex solutions to meet customers' need, to make their pain, sometimes literally, go away. Anyway, so actually, I think we're well beyond this, but I am, just for the purposes, many people you come to, and if you're working with other salespeople, sometimes they're just in broadcast mode, they just can't stop talking, and it's painful. So when you go, now you talked about buying a vacuum cleaner the other day, and unfortunately, I'm going to call them store assistants. I'm sure there's a more appropriate phrase for that, but it's the it's not the level of selling or doing business that we're all at. It's not that well paid, and they're untrained and all of that. They will certainly never get a chance to do training like this, but you're almost getting the lowest common denominator of sales experience there. I wish we could do more about that, but we can't always. But sometimes they're just in broadcast mode. Okay. Yeah, we're all there. Okay, so done that, hearing what's being said, processing, digesting that information. What does that really mean? And asking great questions, I believe, and listening again. So active listening, because we talked about active lead generation and all the rest of it. Active listening does a number of different things. Apart from your understanding, it actually demonstrates your professional excellence. You really know what you're doing, what you're talking about. We talked about authority earlier on. It's a silent way of demonstrating your authority. So truly understanding what's being said. You actually care. You care about solving problems. I've got to believe we all care about solving problems. And if you've listened and you do it in a really good way and you ask really insightful questions, you're actually building all kinds of trust. And actually that client will tell you more than they might tell another vendor because you're so easy to talk to. And they'll often wander or off onto non-business topics that you're actually finding out more about them as a person. That helps you be more informed. Okay, so why, I don't know if anyone knows this person, a guy called Zig Ziglar, Ziglar, and one of the first professional salespeople, really nice Southern United States accent, Louisiana or something like that. He comes from, and he said, fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. So helping people preserve what they already have, if you like, for some protection, and audit and compliance, I've got to believe, comes pretty high up on that list, where you're preserving the reputation in many instances, what they already have, as opposed to buying an additional benefit. There's something psychological, and I can't remember what the science is, and someone at the University of York almost certainly knows this subject inside out, but I think an economist would call it loss aversion. So the fear of loss is actually greater within most people than the desire for gain. Anyway, what's where they go, Kahneman. Right, so some of you will have seen this as well in terms of communicating. It's called the Moravian chart. It's 60 odd years old, and it's been cited it's one of the most cited charts in all of communications. And what it's basically saying is it's producing the reproducing the communication experience in pictorial form and breaking down what that experience kind of looks like. So if you can see that okay on your screens, the words that I'm talking now, that's only 7% of the learning experience. The rest of it is a function of body language, but you can only see from here upwards, thank heavens. And you can see the occasional hand gestures, facial movements, all sorts of other things, but you get limited body language on a video course. Well, in fact, even if you're in a room and we're around a table, unless it was a glass table, you wouldn't be able to see what my kind of legs or ankles are doing either. So you're only getting partial representation, but you're getting something. And then the rest of it is my vocal tonality. Now, I don't know if anyone's talked about vocal tonality before, but it's a really big subject. And Laura, you mentioned cold calling. And of course, that's all you got. You haven't got any video at all. All you've got is audio, and so your voice all of a sudden becomes vitally important. That's a really interesting subject. Okay, so we're talking about verbal clues, which is the word, 37%, and non-verbal clues, which is 93% of the overall pie. And if anyone knows about pies, I do. Right. So what is the greatest of all these communication skills? I believe listening. I don't believe you can talk and learn at the same time. I believe you can only learn by listening and observing. But it's listening has to be taught, and I hope we're going to get to the crux of what it takes to be a good listener on this. Okay. Why is vocal intonation so important? So this is a mind-numbingly boring statement, and but is it? That's the question I'm going to ask. And the emphasis that you put on words, how you say something, can make it mean different things. And I've boiled it down to something really basic, just to emphasize the point, really. So I did not say he bought a new laptop. So how could we say that differently? I didn't say he bought a new laptop. Somebody else said he bought a new laptop. That's the inference. I did not say he bought a new laptop. He might have bought something else. So the same boring sentence could actually mean several different things. I didn't say he bought a new laptop. They could have leased it, or they could have stolen it. And this is why those throwaway sentences from your prospective customers, listening is so much more than that statement. Where's the emphasis? Where's the tonality? I didn't say he bought a new laptop. Could have been secondhand, could have been pre-owned. So just today, this morning, the reason I was a minute or so late, and I do apologize, was because I'm doing a project for another organization, and I don't know if anyone's come across GDPR. I really thought we were all done and dusted with GDPR, and but we're not. But that's a major subject for you, of course, Medwin. And all of a sudden, what was that?
So yeah, it's one of our main subjects.
Yeah, okay. I literally is pricked up when I mentioned GDPR. It can do two things. Your ears can prick up, or you can fall right asleep. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, okay. I'm presuming that's GDPR and not me causing you to do that, Laurie. Okay. Anyway, this company hiding behind, we can't do that because of GDPR. And I know a few GDPR consultants. Now, I never knew you could make an actual living around consulting about GDPR compliance. Yes, I absolutely get that. But anyway, you can. So I phoned my mate Jez, and he said to me, if that's all they're worried about, just get them to give you one of their laptops. you know, because it's got all the security on it, because we're batting away GDPR. And so the solution is, well, just give me one of your laptops. So that's the solution that we've done. So rather than figuring out a new contract and trying to vary contracts between lawyers, takes time, and £550 an hour costs money as well. So they're just going to give me a laptop to borrow for this project, and GDPR is all taken care of because we're on their systems. So all of a sudden, me listening, I didn't need to go to a vast level of expense or a huge amount of effort. I just phoned someone with a reasonably, well, first of all, an expert in their field, but a reasonably good understanding of the context as well. Came up with a solution. I owe him, and it cost me whatever a pint of lager costs these days, probably about 27 quid, knowing the, well, depending on where you're going. But anyway, it saved all that messing about. So anyway, didn't say you bought a new laptop. That's why that came to mind. But didn't say you bought a new laptop. You might have got a tablet, might have got a new iPhone, but it wasn't a laptop that you bought. And this is why the police are so hot on everything. So everything's got to be analysed to the nth degree. Now, hopefully, we don't need to do that, but that was just a very basic sort of exercise on the importance of vocal tonality and the different meanings we can accidentally give away when we're talking or when we're listening. You've got the point. So on listening, now, actually, Lauren, you may have seen this before, but it was introduced to me when I was by someone else, a guy called Nigel Smith, when I was trying to, one of the mistakes I made earlier on in my career, I've been told that listening was a really key skill. And so, because I'm quite a literalist, I hardly said anything in some of the meetings I was going to beyond black coffee, please. I was just asking questions, listening. And do you know what? When you're in that kind of behavior, you're no longer in sales. You are in counseling. So and that's what so a very valid, by the way, very valid and valuable occupation. But I was in sales. So I believe the optimum ratio of listening to talking is, and it depends on the personality and all those other things, but it's going to be somewhere between 25% and 33%. So a quarter and a third of the time you should be talking, therefore listening 2/3 to 3/4 of the time. Now I'm very happy to be challenged on that. Very happy.
Was that us talking for 1/3 of the time?
Listening 2/3 of the time. Therefore, the emphasis, the burden, but it was the wrong word. But the dominant conversation is on their part. They're doing all the talking. Now,
I was just going to say, yeah. I found this true in my last job where I was selling grants, because you get in touch with people about grants and their initial thing was, oh my gosh, I don't want to get involved with grants, so much paperwork, really hard to access, too much time, and I found it was really important to listen to why they didn't want the grant, so that then rather than going in and saying, oh, you'll get this amount and this and this and this, they didn't care about that. They wanted to know that their barriers to accessing grants, we were able to help them with. So, rather than saying we've got this grant of up to £20,000, we'd be much more, we've got experienced advisors, they will help you write the application form. You will fill out a very short form. You won't be taken down the rabbit hole of, filling out all of this, then to be told no. We've got quite a refined process at the university. So to listen to them and then to kind of address their concerns was definitely really valuable.
Yeah. That's a great shout. So allow them to have their say. You've listened, but actually the reality is this: we take care of it, and you took away their pain, and ultimately that's what we're doing as salespeople, or in the process of selling, we're solving someone's pain. Sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively. I've just noticed the time. Would you mind if we took a 5 minute break so I can get a brew? Would that be and you can enjoy the view outside of your Torquay bedroom window or your Moroccan bedroom window there, Medwin? Is that okay? So
Funnily
it
enough,
is.
I used to live in Torquay as well.
Yeah, indeed. So it's 33 now. So we'll see you at 38 if they're 10:38, if that's okay. All right, brilliant. See you shortly. Here we go. Excuse me. Right.
You guys seen the news? National Grid has warned that British households that blackouts may be imposed between 4 and 7 p.m. on really, really cold wintry days. If you cut gas exports, sorry. Fun. Everyone get your candles in.
It reminds me of an old joke that Tony Blackburn used to wheel out now and again. I'm showing the age now, but I'm okay with that. He used to say, when we were young, we were really poor, and when it was really cold, we used to all sit around, huddled around a candle. And when it got really cold, we used to light it. And do you know what? Not much has changed in 50 years because we're kind of back there again. But anyway, now don't want to get political or anything like that. But that was a fantastic example. The last 30 days or thereabouts of not listening, of not talking. So if you've got anything remotely controversial, then you need to talk to your most important customers, your most important stakeholders first. I can't believe I'm even
Write that down. Actually,
sorry, what was that?
I'm going to write that down. Actually, that's useful.
Talk to them first, get some feedback. It can be, sometimes it can be really sobering because nobody likes price rises or tax rises or anything like that. Sometimes they've just got to happen because going back to last week, if there's one thing worse than no business, it's bad business. So that was an object example, an object lesson, if you like, in how not to do stuff. And okay, right. I'm going to go off on a tangent, but I wrote a blog on it, and some of you may have received that, and some of you may not. But it's not particularly it's not a political kind of statement. It's just a statement.
It's a fact. Yeah,
it's a fact. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's go with oh, you disappeared, but there you are now. Okay, right, so share screen, and so where we're trying to get to is hopefully you can see that I use this it's called a Zeeman pyramid, Z-Y-M-A-N, which I think I referred to before, but I use it quite a lot because being a bear of very little brain, as Mrs. Roselle says, which I agree with, it helps me compartmentalize things into three, the power of three. If anyone's come across that before, the power of three, very, very important. So your competition, and we've all got competition, no matter how unique we think our product or service is. I'm going to tell you now, 80% of your competition are going to be in the Me Too box, and very few of them will ever get above that. And the 80-20 rule kind of says that that's probably more true than not true. And so they're not putting an awful lot of thought into their questions for whatever reason that might be. Their company might not invest in the way that you are investing, or your companies are investing in you, for whatever reason that might be. 15% are going to make it into the different because they thought about it, they thought about their questions, but really where you want to get to is being in the top 5%, and it is 5%, not 1%, and being preferred in terms of when your prospective customers want to do anything new, you're the first person. They don't even think about going somewhere else. you're the first person they come to because you give them so much insight and value. And we're going to talk about how to get to that place. So the importance of asking the usual questions versus great questions. So, okay, so now a guy called Dan Patrick, I don't know if anyone's heard of him, but he's a very famous sports commentator in the United States. And he's done some amazing interviews with the great and the good of sports and other pursuits as well. And he says, you know, great interviews, the ones that are really engaging and entertaining and insightful and all those things, are not where you remember the answers, not where you remember the questions, but it is the question that's released, unlocked the answer, and that's where the art form is. Yeah, like all professionals make a pursuit look easy, but we all know it's taken them years and years to get to that point. So some of the most insightful questions that I've not necessarily been asked, but I've witnessed being asked, where I've gone with my manager to take them to a meeting because maybe I was intimidated by somebody's seniority, or I wanted to respect their seniority by taking one of my senior managers from, and some of the questions that I've been asked by prospects. It's such a basic question, but not everyone's able to answer it. Why do people buy from you? That's a great question. And I ask, most I probably asked in maybe not the same words, but I've certainly asked your dad, Medwin, why do people buy from you? Because I'm always interested to hear what the answer is.
I was, yeah, as soon as that came up, I've just written down why do people buy from us, and I've put quality over price, enjoyable learning, excellent support. Nice and simple. That's all it is.
Yeah, fantastic. That really was. Has anyone else got their answer for that question? Go on then, Laurie.
This sounds like really super humble, but because they like me.
Okay. Tell me some more about that.
Parents are protective of their children.
Mm-hmm.
They are not going to trust somebody that they don't like. And it's that simple. If they know, like, and trust me, they will come to me because they can't do it on their own.
No, and that's what I was looking for. So, yes, but it's actually no like trust. I think it is that. I'm about to say Holy Trinity, but I'm not sure I should say that. But it is. But it is. Yeah. It's an important package of know, like, trust. There are instances I've been involved where I may have already told the story about Rolls-Royce and EDS. The reason they got hired because they hated them. They hated EDS, but they were really good at their job, and it was exactly the culture that they needed to engage. They knew they were going to be in for a rough ride, but it's what they needed to get the cost of their IT down from one level to another. That was the value proposition. So they didn't necessarily like them, but they knew them and they trusted them to get the job done. And actually 2 out of 3 ain't bad. All right, so trust and price. One of the first meetings I ever went to was when I joined EDS, massive learning experience for me, and different league to what I've been used to was we were asked that question, or rather my boss was asked that question by a big telecoms company. Why do people buy from you? Instant answer, trust us. Does the board trust us? Have we got the right price? Nothing else matters. But that was the answer for them. It may not be the same for you. Daryl, what are your thoughts on that?
I am listening this time.
Yeah, I got that.
I thought that Medwin's answer was really clear and very quick. I like that. And I think actually it reminded me back to, I think was it the first one when we did the value proposition? Because actually getting that something in terms of your value proposition, in terms of why people buy from you, is important.
Yeah.
And I think that, Keith, what I naturally think of is know, like, and trust. But know, like, and trust, you're in the me too. Because I think most people will say that these days. So you need to go a bit further. Whereas I thought Medwin's was very specific, very clear, and made a lot of sense. And so I think in terms of thinking about myself, I put about it's a little bit about your sort of your case studies. And in my case, I think it's a case that I'm going to help them, I'm going to guide them, I'm going to take them through a solution. It's not a quick fix. It's so they do need that guidance. So I think just having a quick 3 phrases that are just ingrained up here is probably part of that preparation. And I think we all agree is that when you are going into a meeting, it is all about preparation. It might not be writing things down. We'll all do it differently, but it's getting it fixed up here.
Yeah.
And I think really it's going to vary a lot from meeting to meeting. But if you don't, it's what is it? Be prepared to fail if you don't, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Ben Franklin, I think, said something like, if you don't prepare, if you fail to prepare, you will automatically fail.
Yeah.
Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah.
And proper porridge also prevents poor.
Now then, what's proper porridge there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's got seeds and fruit on, but to answer the question, but there you go. See, Laura, you weren't expecting that, were you? Okay, so open and closed questions. Is open closed? Does anyone give me a definition of what a closed question is?
It's one that's asking for a yes or no, really, isn't it?
Well, the only real answer is yes or no.
It's all about just encouraging a conversation, really, isn't it? The open side of it.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of an example of a closed question.
Do you like coffee?
Thank you. Yes, I love coffee, but that's the answer. That's a great question. Great question. And they're just as important as each other is knowing when to use closed questions when you want to go down a particular route, or you just need to know the answer to a question. When you want to go down a particular route, just keeping an eye on time as well. Open questions. Someone give me an answer of an open question.
How do you feel about this, or how can we better provide this for you? Yeah. How question.
Yeah. What are you saying, Mr. Kimber? Remember the Peaky Blinders thing and that scene? What are you saying, Mr. Kimber? If you can't answer yes or no to that, he's got to give you an answer, which is going to be insightful. So knowing when to use those questions, and is it taking you further towards or further away from your objective? And that's why you've got to have best possible result, minimum acceptable result. Also, by asking questions, and it's called Socratic questioning, you get to demonstrate your expertise. You know where the bodies are buried. You know what's required. So in terms of implementing your solution, Medwin, you may know how hard it is to get IT people to kind of open up their systems and allow you to, whatever the process is, but you can demonstrate your expertise, your excellence in that area by asking questions. And I think it was Michael Mansfield famous, well, KC now, but formerly QC. Only a foolish lawyer would ask a question to which he didn't know the answer. So the ability to ask key questions, demonstrate your insight, and knowing how awkward they can be to answer sometimes is. Yeah, Laurie, please. I'm okay. I'm in trouble, I think.
I just have a quick question. So there are some that you don't know the answer to, which you need to find out the answer to. So, for example, what's your biggest challenge regarding X? They tell you, and then you say, what have you done about that so far? Because then when you know what they've already done about it, you don't have to like talk down to them by saying these are the possible solutions. I know all of that. I've done all of that already. What do you know? You're just telling me what everybody else has said. So when they tell you what they've already done, then you can zero in on what hasn't been done.
Yeah, I absolutely accept that. And but I think that given that you're not a novice to your area, you are going to sort of know the kinds of things that they might have done to get to the point where they're bringing you in to have a conversation with, because you're familiar. So again, I'm happy to be challenged on that, but
I think you're assuming.
I'm assuming. Okay.
I think actually I think that question is a really good question, because I think it's all about really promoting a really interesting conversation and adding more to your credibility by the fact that you'll be able to add and contribute when they just, say the first few things that they've done.
Yeah. And you can demonstrate your expertise by taking that information and really unpicking it, if you like.
Yeah.
Get to the root cause rather than just the symptom. Is that?
I think it makes me think of things as well. So as they say what they've done so far, I think there'll be extra ideas that come into your mind that will actually add more value.
Another thing is that when they tell you something that they've done that doesn't work, before they tell you why it didn't work, you can tell them why it didn't work. And then they're like, oh, you really do know your area of expertise.
Oh, I think it was the word you were looking for. Okay. Medwin, Rachel, you got anything on that, or do you want me to move on?
I think that questions, I love using questions in general. Like as a person, I love playing devil's advocate. I think that's something I've probably got from my dad as well. I do it all the time. But there's a teaching technique where if you're trying to get a point over to a group of people, a group of children, I guess in that case, you ask a question, receive an answer which could be slightly more simple than you wanted, and then essentially agree with them, and you're reiterating that information in a more succinct way, which it's something I use quite a lot in meetings as well, just as I can get people on board by agreeing with what they're saying, repeating what they're saying with slightly longer words sometimes, and it kind of helps to bring people in and bring people in to trust you. I think questions arguably are as important sometimes, if not more important than everything else.
Yes. Yeah. So you're testing your understanding of what they've told you,
and not only and even on like a personal level, once just the act of repeating something helps solidify it within your own brain as well. Some of the best form of learning is when you're regurgitating information to other people as well, to solidify it within your own head.
Another technique is to always assume the other person is at least 10% correct. So even if they say something that's completely wrong in your view, you can say, okay, what I like about what you just said is X, and we could also think about this, which is connected to what you liked about it, and that can expand it, and then they are being acknowledged for their idea.
Yeah.
And you can switch the whole thing around to a whole new way of thinking, which allows them to not lose face because they said something that is the opposite of what you're trying to get them to understand. So I think that would be really helpful for someone like Rachel, who's trying to get people to think about other ways that they could use the services that you provide, you know?
That's a good shout. Rachel, do you want to add to that or move on, or?
No, I think it's absolutely right. I was thinking of a course that I went on where somebody was given the example of a carpet salesman person even, and they said, you know, you could just go in and just sell the carpet to people, or you could say, you know, you could qualify who you are and then say, is there a particular colour of carpet? Is there a particular type of carpet? Because there's no point giving them details of the whole range if they've already made their mind up on a certain type of something that they want. So it's like with the grants and things, I'd ask things like, what are your barriers to accessing grant funding? Or for now, I'm thinking with the training, you know, is there a particular type of training, or have you had this training before and why didn't it work? So yeah, questions are really, really important.
Good. So that kind of points towards you selling what they want or what they need. And there was some of that coming out of there. Okay, brilliant. Okay, right. So next, I do want to go through this because I'm kind of hoping to bring up some other points. Value pyramid. So the Me Too, where I think 80%, an assumption, it might be 60, might be 70, whatever it is, but I think it's about 80. They'll talk about scope. What are you trying to do here? And I think that question is probably valid for most people. When do you want to do it? Again, it's an open question. You can't answer yes or no. You've got to give some information, but it does help us to gather some information. Have you got a budget? And some people will have, some people won't have. It doesn't necessarily mean that we stop in the process, but we're just asking the question. Of course, if they haven't got a budget, you know, and I have to say, I still something in me that I have to consciously get over in terms of asking for money or asking for commitment. I have to battle with myself and get over that to get to the right point. It's something I still struggle with these days. So if you do struggle with that, you're not alone, but we need to examine why exactly that is. Okay, next. So probably much more important question. Yes, of course, those basics are really helpful. Large proportion of people will stop there. They'll give you a quote. We'll do this work for, but actually they've really missed what I would call the gravy on the meal that you're about to prepare, or the icing on the cake, or whatever it happens to be. But a much more insightful question is, well, why are you doing this? And you explored that a little bit, Laurie, just now. You know, what have you done about this, and all the rest of it? Why are you doing this? Why is that important to you? And the importance of trying to unpick or trying to drill down, monetize, get to the next level that very few people will get to because they haven't thought about it, or they haven't got the confidence to, you know, go there with the customer, try and monetize that. By monetizing, by the way, does anyone have an opinion on what monetizing means in this context?
In this context, is it kind of like it's drill down and then act on it, make it happen kind of thing? Or am I reading that wrong?
No, that's why I asked the question. I just wanted to sort of test the understanding. In this particular instance, what I mean is, how much is it costing you not to be doing this project? And so I'll give you a for instance, which won't be 100% fit. I worked on an HR project a couple of years ago, which was talking about sickness absence, and it was a public sector institution. Won't name for obvious reasons, but anyway, they had a particular problem with sickness absence, and and I asked them, well, so what is it? And they said, well, the average person is off 8 days a year with sickness. That's the average. And bear in mind, we're talking a sizable organization, 1,000 or so people, which in public sector is not huge, but it's a sizable organization for most of us. So it's 8,000 days average that are lost in terms of productivity. So the average salary in that organization was about £30,000. And so we can put a number on how much that's costing and it's only an average. It's not going to be the real number, but it's something to hang our hat on, if you like. So 8,000 times, what was it, 30,000 a year, 8,000 days. Anyway, there's a big number out there, whatever it happens to be. And that's monetizing. So
I think it
if
was an
we,
extension.
sorry, what was that?
I think that going back to monetize, and I think it's also that question and answering is that, and sometimes it depends upon whether you're fishing in the right pool, because really part of monetizing it is the ability to have a sensible conversation about what the return on the investment is.
Yes, but in the questioning process, I wasn't quite there yet. But you're seeing where it's going to go, aren't you? So the test is so the next stage is when you're monetizing. So we put a number on that is notionally costing $250,000 a year, which is average salary times number of days off sick. 8 times 30,000, 240,000. Daryl, you're going to say something?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Oh, okay, right. Right, so okay, right. So that's my
I
assumption.
can if you like, but
I'm sure. So so $250,000, we've monetized that situation. So if it's going to cost £241,000 to fix that, one would argue, at least on a return on investment thing, in terms of pure numbers, by the way, it's going to be hard to make that argument. Okay, so anyway, what we did is did two things. We took them through a process about we're going to understand what's causing sickness. So they put into place a voice of the workforce survey. Why are people going sick? It came down to stress, pandemic, lockdown. It's actually making people ill, and the process of not being able to see other human beings. And I felt that myself, so I could relate to that. Anyway, so put in place a wellness package, and the wellness package. Another question was: is there a standard rate of return or minimum rate of return that the organization looks to, whether projects will pass or not? Now, some people will call it an internal rate of return, but the point is, if it's going to cost £241,000 to fix a £240,000 problem, probably not going to work. But also, if they're looking for a minimum return on their resources of, let's say, 200%, as long as it costs less than £80,000 to fix that problem, in the first year, of course, you're going to get benefits going on. As long as it costs less than £80,000 to fix that problem, then we're probably going to make that solution work. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to buy from you, but we're going to make the investment case work. We're going to bring them into the market. So monetizing the problem is really, really helpful. This is a little bit abstract, but hopefully you're following the kind of process. So what after that project, we went back and we now of course you're never going to get it down to zero, but we went back, and the next year when they did the numbers again, average time off sick was 4.8 days. So they gained 3.2 days per employee times salary, etc., etc. That was the benefits to them. So we're able. Now that was quite unusual. Most companies they implement stuff, they don't go back and measure, did we actually realize all the benefits, which is quite a reflective and sometimes a very sobering process to go through.
What was the wellness plan, Keith? Do you know?
I don't know all the details, but basically it was I'll tell you one of the things they did. They identified it was the lack of human contact, and we're in lockdown, so there's not much you can do with that. They put in a virtual kitchen, so which was always on, and always there was always someone in there, and the only rule was that you weren't allowed to talk about work. So there was always someone in there. Sometimes it was a very senior executive that all the seniors had to volunteer some time during the week, and it might be half an hour, it might be an hour, but there was always someone in there. And at the very minimum, it would be an assistant to one of the executives. So you could be guaranteed during office hours, if you just needed to talk to someone about something, you could go into that room. There might be others in there as well, and you could have a conversation. Now that cost approximately zero to implement, because it was setting up, just nailing up a Zoom room, a Teams in this instance, a Teams room that someone could just go into and just say, I'm having a crap day, or I just need to talk to someone about this, or whatever it is. It's not but just engaging with another human being about non-work, and that was innovative. Not too many people doing that at the time, and actually they identified through that process that people were getting stressed. So part of the other, so that was a very small piece of the pie. Part of the rest of it was to go through creating resilience learning programs for people, how they can become more resilient. And I'm getting into areas that I'm really not qualified to talk about, but anyway, that was part of the thinking process. What are you thinking, Rachel?
No, I'm just thinking about the bonus package. I'm just listening.
Yeah. Okay. So I know enough to be dangerous. Okay. So that was the example. Thanks for asking the question. So apart from yourself, so often the people we're talking to, it's not just them making a decision, but you have to be really careful asking that question, because if you say the obvious thing, the 80% are going to ask who's making the decision. That's a great way to alienate yourself from the person that you're actually talking to, because it suggests they're not important enough to make the decision. And so that's a great way to make enemies. So apart from you, who else is involved in making a decision?
It's true that, because sometimes I'd send out an email and you would hit reception, and or you might even talk to reception, and yeah, they are actually the gateway. So if you put them off, or I want to talk to a senior business owner, well, actually talk to them, and if they're on your side, then they will put you through. Yeah. So it's really important to not put people off.
Yeah, good shout. And I did something on gatekeepers a few weeks ago on one of those Tuesday things about how to make friends with a gatekeeper, and you get more with honey than you do with vinegar, if that phrase translates. I firmly believe that's the case. So apart from yourself, who else should I talk to? Is a really important phrase. Laurie, you look as though you want to ask something, or say something. Is that no? If you don't want to, that's fine.
I don't know if this is helpful at all, but we we were thinking about this recently as well. We've started using a CRM to kind of a customer relations management system, Wix, essentially, to keep an eye on everyone and where they're at. And what we've started asking is essentially explaining to people, to keep up to date with everything that's going on and all of our customers. We like to write down everyone's details, who they are, who they work for, what department they're in if need be, but what their job role is. And obviously for the sector I'm in, that makes things much more clear in terms of who I'm dealing with. But I don't know if that's, I don't know what you think, Keith, if that's a potential other way of phrasing it is can I, in my situation at least, what's your job role? Can you give me an idea of what you do sort of day to day with an organization so I can better serve you during this transaction?
I think that's really important because then you can segment your customers and tailor your communications to them. So I think that's massively important.
Okay, right, cool.
Excellent, thanks, Rachel. That was absolutely right. Can you and sometimes actually in the introduction part of the meeting, whether it's over Zoom or in person or whatever it happens to be, is can you just tell me a little bit about your role? What's the breadth? And depending on where that conversation can go. Sorry, maybe if you're trying to say something, you're on mute.
I know. Sorry, I was just saying I really like the way you phrase that, so I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, thanks for that. That would be an interesting part, but also, and you probably can't ask this for several meetings yet, but that person, we all have goals, revenue goals, margin goals, whatever it happens to be, number of leads type goals. That person is going to have KPIs associated with their role in developing your relationship with that customer. That would be one of your goals in a few months' time when you've got that trust and you've not just got it at a transactional level, but you've actually got trust and they know what you're all about. If you can understand what their KPIs are, what gets them a bonus or what they get measured on, that helps you understand more about them and how you can serve them in a particular way to keep them in their job, but also, you can make or break careers in what we're doing, because if what you deliver to them doesn't work, they become forever tarred with that project, and I've seen that happen. But equally, I've seen people that have been promoted as a direct result of doing some of the work that I've done, and you'll find that in your careers too. Anyway, okay, so here's another question, which sounds incredibly basic, but is incredibly important as well. Laurie, I've got to believe you're already asking this question a number of different ways, but just how are you coping with, now some of that has gone away a little bit, but when you can get past just the cursory, most people don't really care what the answer to that question is, sadly, but it's true. But if you can ask that and demonstrate that you actually do care how they're getting on, that's when you get to a much more productive and a fruitful relationship, by demonstrating that. What's that phrase? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's still true. Okay, so here's another good question, is, and depending on what you're doing, what does great look like? So I know you'll be familiar with what does good look like. Good is the enemy of great. So what does great look like to the board? So yes, you want to buy this compliance, this training, this whatever it happens to be. What would a great result look like to the board? What would make them come back and say, Medwin, you did a fantastic job. That was really great. So what is the board looking for? What does success look like to them? And that shows that you're way beyond a Me Too type question. You're right into the, you want to understand what it's going to mean organizationally. What does great look like? Daryl, any thoughts?
Well, in terms of what great looks like.
Well, just the general thought of
No, I
next
think
level
this
type
is a really
question.
interesting slide, and I think it's a really worthwhile conversation. I think there's a lot, everything that's on here, it's got real meaning, and actually by going through these sort of stages, you're actually going to add depth to the conversation. Because you're adding depth, it's increasing your credibility.
Yeah.
And I think really, as you say, it is, you know, and if I look back, perhaps at some of my history, something is that one of the most important things that, you know, we know is that, you know, always say thank you. But by the same token, the fact that you're asking people how are you, I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think certainly by that time you're already having a good conversation, and that this might be the first, it might be the second time they've met you. I think it just adds the next layer in terms of, well, actually, I really like working with this person. So it gets you to that preferred level.
Yeah.
It is. It's, you know, as you know, as the pyramid's illustrating, it's about, as I say, growing credibility, growing trust, going back to now like and trust again, but with real meaning.
Yeah, good shout. Thank you. Tips. Tips is we can't control absolutely everything that's going on in the world at the moment. So one of if you can get to ask the question of what are the big issues affecting your business at the moment, it's always an enlightening question to ask, and the answer to that is almost always enlightening as well. But so tips are trends, implications, possibilities, solutions. So an example would be what's affecting your business right now: energy prices. There's very few people in the world that can do anything about that. But it's something we're all affected by, and we have to build that into our household P&L, if you like, our household costs with energy prices, mortgage rates going up. Very few of us have any control over that, but you know, so what's the trend? What's the implication? How does it affect our business? What are the possibilities? Outcomes, and what are the solutions? What can we do about it? Well, we can get a better deal if they're available. We can, you know, not turn on the heating until we really do. You know, we've gone well past lighting the candle at this stage. Can take it back, but these kind of questions, I'm making it ridiculously simple. Life's not that simple, but to go through the thought process about what are the issues affecting. Of course, the pandemic would have been, I'd like to think societally we're beyond the pandemic now, we're all protected or whatever, but there are still some, and the NHS is one example, there are still some sort of hangovers from the pandemic that are still being dealt with. 6 million people waiting for elective surgery or whatever it happens to be, but some of your businesses that you're interacting with will still not have fully recovered from the pandemic, and they might be exposed to energy costs or issues are resulting from the last 2 or 3 years. The last thing I want to go through is bringing a gift, and bringing a gift. I don't mean, you know, most people would interpret that as a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates or something like that. By all means, do that as a thank you. By bringing a gift, what I mean is the gift of insight, of research, by by being able to tell someone something about their business or something about their market that they don't already know. So Laurie, in terms of trauma, if you can talk about trauma and bring some information to the table that your customer, client doesn't already know, that helps them understand why they are the way they are, that is a gift. Same way, if you can tell someone about compliance or someone about their engineering businesses in the market that's going on that they don't already know about, that is your gift. And there's a fantastic way to build credibility that you really know your onions, so to speak. And if it's a really big account that you're working with, and you can tell someone something that's going on in their organization, and I don't mean telling tales out of school, I mean something that's, you know, did you know this is going on? Then that is incredibly valuable. That suggests that you're going above and beyond. It's not a donor-recipient relationship, which 80% of relationships are, where they're paying you a bit of money and you're providing a bit of service. Is much more intellectual, much more deep and meaningful than a donor-recipient type relationship. Medwin, you want to ask it?
Yeah, do you have any way that you would recommend kind of tackling that as just a conversation starter? Because if I was, it might just be me in my own situation. I'm just thinking of a way that I could phrase saying something that someone, because if I think about all of my clients, if I was to go to them and say, are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? The majority of them would probably get quite pissed off and be like, you're 23 years old. Don't talk to me about this stuff, you know, because I'm aware that my age does play a big role in what I do. And I think I kind of surprise people sometimes. And people, from what I've noticed, people do not like being told how things are by a 23-year-old. So I don't, it might just be more for me this than anyone else, but it'd be really good to know how I can approach these things in a way that it's just not going to be divisive, you know.
Laurie's got an answer for you, I think.
Thank you.
A really important question, by the way. After Laurie, I would like to come in after that.
Earlier, we were talking about asking them what their biggest challenge is and what they've already done. So if they tell you what they've already done, you can say, oh, and by the way, here's another thing. I don't know if you thought of it, but this is what other customers are doing. And it's not, I know more, this is what other people are doing. So it could be a way of introducing it.
Thank you. I'm going to write that down now.
No, that's great. That's a great shout. It's ageism in reverse, isn't it? And here's one thing I think in fact, I know I've learned through having 4 children and working with graduates at business and management schools, is that I mean, in the old days, the mentor would be, you know, kind of sat and have loads of people around their feet, metaphorically espousing their wisdom. That would be the traditional way that a mentor-mentee relationship kind of worked. I don't believe that. There'll be some people that thrive on that. I don't. And when I mentor some people, actually I learn as much out of it as anyone else. And we're into the last 2 minutes now, Medwin, but for the first time in industrial history, we've got 3 generations of people working under the same roof, or the same virtual roof as we are now. You've got, and this is just a fact. You've got you, maybe if I may say so, at the earlier part of their, well, it's just a fact. At the early part of their career, we're going to have people in their sort of 40s that are midway kind of through their career, and we're going to have people, I'm going to say like me because I probably am the oldest person on this call, I am not at the end of my career. I'm not going to retire till I'm 117. I've checked my pension arrangements. But that's the trouble when you invest in tech stocks and leave them to fester. So all of a sudden you've got 3 generations of people, and the other thing is, I feel like I'm talking too much now. My eldest son is going to be 27 next week, and I remember when he was 2.5, just like it was yesterday, we had a PlayStation 1. So, by the way, I don't know what the first words you ever learned to read from a book was, but typically it would be cat, sat, mat, mum, dad, something, 3 letters, palindromic probably, and that would be it. Michael, my eldest, we had a PlayStation 1. Now he knew that we couldn't start playing that racing game, split screen. I'd be underneath, he'd be on top. He knew he couldn't start playing racing until a particular word stopped flashing on the screen, and that word was loading. And that is I guess a description of the different generations. With me, it was cat, sat, mat, whatever. So the point is, digital is in Michael's DNA. I can say that with some authority because I know Michael quite well. Maybe it may be true with you or not, but it is generally true of that generation. You can't tell up everyone with that kind of statement, but it is interesting, and that's how people that run social media, people that do my social media are the same age as you, Medwin, and I trust them because they talk the language. They just know more about it than I do. So that whole mentee mentor thing is much more equal than perhaps it used to be, and I think that's healthy actually. That's all right by me.
I think that may just been all I need. I might just need to get my shoulders back and be a bit more confident with it.
I think so. In fact, I know so, and the more you do this, the more confident that you'll become. I have to be careful it doesn't spill over into arrogance, of course. Which is normally an overcompensation for something else. But I do think it's really important. Now, listen, I know technically we're out of time. I have got 5 more minutes, but I will totally respect if everyone needs to.
Sorry, I've just jumped on that, guys.
But I totally understand if everyone needs to jump off because it is 11:30. But I have got 5 minutes if there's anything you want to talk about or kind of go through. If not, I'll just wrap up and say what we're going to be doing next week.
Can I just quickly jump in, Medwin? I would never have guessed you were 23 until you told me. So that's another thing. Yeah, I didn't hear what you said because your mic was.
Sorry, no, I was just saying, I do also get that quite a lot as well. But yeah.
So it might be more what you're thinking people are thinking rather than what people are thinking.
Yeah, that's
more in my head.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well. So, yeah, are you kind of projecting, making a false assumption? That is really interesting. Really interesting.
I think if you take age out of it, I think being able to ask questions, having an authority, having a level of confidence without arrogance will actually do you a lot of good. If I'm, I've led manufacturing organizations of all sorts and sizes, and I'm always looking for people that I think that actually they want to do something different. And as part of that, you just pick up on people that ask sensible questions. So it's a good thing to do. I think it's also, in some ways, the fact that you are thinking about it is showing that there's a level of consciousness, just in case. Not everybody's as open as everybody else. And I think really, what is age really? When I was 21, I was running a small team of people that ages vary between 40 and 60. And that was much more knowledgeable than me in terms of turning bars and metal into flange yokes. They was really good at that. I just had to sort of plan it and just make sure that they did as many flange yokes as they were supposed to. It was great fun. 03202 63,000 the flange was, the spigot.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to add? Rachel, you've been ever so quiet as well.
No, nothing to add.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so next week we're going to be talking about now, Rachel, I think you said you were away. Did you say you're away next week?
Yeah, I'm not working next Tuesday.
Okay, right. Okay. But regardless, we're going to be talking about pursuit, a pursuit strategy. Now, it could be a really simple one because a very small organization you're selling to, or it could be really large and complex, or somewhere in between. But the kind of things we're going to need to think about, and this might be relevant to Medwin's company, or we're going to keep on what we're doing, but we're going to target another market sector. So that might be an example of a pursuit. What are we going to need? What things we're going to need to think about in order to win those new customers? Okay. Brilliant. Okay, right. I'll get this. My laptop will do whatever it does afterwards, rendering, I think it's called. And then I'll get the recording and slides for next week across to you. Message me if there's anything else, but otherwise, thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. Thanks all. Cheers.
See you later.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone. Have a good
Bye.
week.